Good evening and welcome to The Real Study with your hosts, Mr. Snidbits,
Welcome back to A Real Study.
Black Girl Marvel,
But I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
Mr. Marvelite,
not knowing anything about the film.
all the movie things,
And I was locked in right away.
the pre-review with Super Gummy Guru,
Preview.
and me, the Real Study movie voice guy. Let's go to the poster wall.
Good evening and welcome to The Real Study. As always, I am Mr. Snidbits, and to my left we have Black Girl Marvel, as well as Mr. Marvelite. No, all the movie things tonight. Some things came up, but we do have a special guest, and that is Will Wilkins. Welcome, Will. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me. It's always nice to be asked somewhere because it tells you I may hold just a small bit of relevance somehow.
I think maybe. I think possibly. Just so you guys know, if you don't know who Will Wilkins is, which we hope you do, not only is he a TikToker robot extraordinaire, but also the CTO of Kevin Smith's Smodcast, as well as his own podcast. Would you want to go ahead and give a plug to your podcast real quick, Will?
Oh, sure. It's Netheads. Anywhere you can find it, netheadsonair.com is the horribly looking and maintained website. And that's the easiest way to find us. And I think everywhere else it's like Netheads on Air. So
Awesome.
there you go. Yeah, and it's I don't want to say it's similar in vein, but it's the infamous two guys talking kind of podcast about things they like. So thankfully it's a niche that doesn't have much population, like only every other podcast.
Right. Oh, and Mr. Marvelite, thank you for the subscription, even though you are a show host. We are going to be reviewing some movies this evening, as we usually do, and those movies are going to be Gravity, Interstellar, and The Martian, The Martian was Will's pick. We will get to that one third. We're going to take them in the order they were released. Let's move over to the drive-in. And let's start talking about Gravity. I know Black Girl Marvel had already expressed some interesting feelings about Gravity, and I thought maybe we'll get into that. But since Will is the guest, I like to, of course, torture our guests and ask them right off the bat, what was your initial impression of Gravity? And if you've seen it more than once, what was your kind of this time around take of Gravity?
I am so excited about all of this because other than the movie I picked, I had seen none of the others. So I had never seen Gravity, and considering Alfonso, I believe, directed my favorite of the Harry Potter films, I was really interested to see this movie. The only thing my initial impression was it's a compelling story. It has me hooked. However, it really just reeked also of we're going to do a lot of visual tricks in this, and boy, you better be ready for them because it's going to be a lot of that.
That's fair. That's fair. How about you, Black Girl Marvel? What was your initial impression of Gravity? This was your first time as well, right?
Yeah, it's my first time watching it. Actually, it's my first time watching all these movies.
Nice.
I saw them come out and I was like, ooh, I'm going to watch these. And I never did. So it was nice to watch these. But my initial reaction to Gravity was, I don't care about her as a character.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they really tried to establish that in the beginning, as this is the only one of the only non-NASA people here. You know, I've just been in simulators. I'm just a scientist. I'm here to reset this motherboard. So that way she's trying to represent us as the every person, but like
But
you
she
said,
really not, because she's smarter than me. She's in space I've never been. And she's next to George Clooney. So I'm not any way connected to her. I was just very disappointed that we got to know information about her later on, which if you look at the other two movies, it's different. You kind of got to know their story, and then they got thrown into this sort of situation. And then it's like, okay, I care about this person. Otherwise, I didn't care about her in a bit. I can go into more, but go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Mr.
for sure.
Marvelite.
Let's hear Mr. Marvelite's take on Gravity.
I was gonna start off the way that Lala mocked me last week, but I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not gonna. Well, see, it stars Sandra Bullock, but
Yay!
No, honestly, first thing that I really thought about, I have not seen Moonfall, but Moonfall literally took scenes out of, or a scene out of Gravity, and it just I like for me, Moonfall, just I feel like it's going to be an amalgam of all. And again, I haven't seen it, so I can't make judgment, but I feel like it's like an amalgam of everything that we've already seen. What I really liked about Gravity was it was visually stunning. um I actually saw this in 3D and really enjoyed it.
Ooh,
I think it's a very good 3D film. I know it's not for everybody, and for me, for 3D, I like movies that are not pop it in your face. I want depth. I want it to feel like when you're looking at your screen, it's like a giant cavern that you're looking into, and you can see the size of it. And a lot of like the Marvel movies have that, where they're not doing the gimmick of popping out like the Journey movies did, but like for Gravity, it was very much you had the the station and get all of the stuff that she's on and she's working in, and you just felt the depth of it, and it made you almost feel more isolated when you're watching the film, and I enjoyed that about it.
I could see that. I
um
could see that.
so yeah, that was my take. Like, again, I don't really relate to a lot of the characters sometimes in these films. There's not a lot of characters that look like me, except for like the Blob from X-Men Origins. And you have these characters where you're I like them because they get you out of your element, they get you out of yourself. And so, though she wasn't the most likable, I enjoyed seeing her go through the trials of trying to survive. And at some points, you even think maybe this isn't going to work out, and it's going to be one of those stories. But yeah,
No, that's
my
fair.
opinion.
So for myself, this is like my fourth time watching it. If there's a movie and there's space involved and NASA's involved, I'm in. Like, you don't have to even ask me. I'm watching it. Sandra Bullock is a pull. George Clooney is sometimes a pull. Depends on the film. But for myself,
Facts.
I had actually a little bit of background. I actually went in the military in order to try to go work for NASA, and so this was actually my ultimate goal, to do what they were doing. And so for me, this was the closest I think I'll ever get to being up there and being terrified. So I kind of get to experience both by watching this film. Are there ridiculous moments and moments where it's just about the special effects? Absolutely, but those special effects are holding up after almost 10 years. So I'm glad to see
Yeah.
that. So yeah, why don't we can break it down now and start just kind of picking this movie apart, the story. But let's also talk about that cinematography, because Biggie brought it up. I also want to say welcome to everybody in the chat. There are a lot of chatters today.
Yay.
We've got a lot of people that have showed up. So thank you to
Hello.
the new chatters, the real
Yay.
students, I guess is what we considered calling you guys.
Yes.
Um,
Gotta get that going. The real
right, the real
students.
students.
Yes.
Anyway, we got cell phone and wallet and keys is here. Mickey's here.
Smoking Aces. Yes.
Oh, somebody did
Sorry.
Smoking Aces. Biggie Smoking Aces. So we'll be
I
doing
got
Smoking Aces
excited.
in the future.
Cool,
So
cool.
yeah, welcome Mountain Door. Everybody's showing up. This is awesome. Thank you everybody for being here.
Oh, Mountain Door, that's awesome. I've been seeing them on the live.
Right. So lots of people. A crying baby. It sounds like. So pardon me there.
Yes, poor babes.
That's okay.
They're being forced to watch Gravity right now.
That might be
Yeah.
the case.
Oh.
So-
Oh.
So movie opens up and we're already in space, and then we got this kind of long draw before we even see the shuttle come up, and it's kind of weird watching a movie with the shuttle now that it's been decommissioned and completely set
Mhm.
aside. But it kind of draws you in slowly, and then the whole movie is full of these kind of sweeping shots. Especially the shots of Earth are, I think, gorgeous. The big screen would definitely be the place to watch this. But did you guys feel like the other character, the Clooney character, and I say that because this movie literally only has like two characters. Do you think the George Clooney character was needed in the way that they used him the second time around when he comes back?
Yes. I say yes simply because he was like her push. She really didn't know anything. Like, everything crashed. She didn't know to grab, she didn't know to like unhook herself so they could come. Like, she didn't know these things. Like, they established that she only has 6 months of training, and that this guy has been doing this for 1,000 years, and this is his last time. He was very, very comfortable just drifting in space, which I thought was weird. I'm like, how many times have you drifted in space to a point that you're this comfortable? But I felt like he was doing it for her benefit because she was new. I felt like he was needed, but I felt like George Clooney didn't have to play him. I felt like it could have been a random actor that played this character that was just charismatic. I felt like they was like, okay, put on an astronaut suit and be yourself, George Clooney, and that's all he did.
Yeah.
I almost feel like they had to make her have a likable, noticeable like co-star, just because she just doesn't have much depth at first, and you kind of build up throughout the movie, but you can automatically, you can kind of attach to a friendly or like an upbeat, George Clooney, and then you're reeling from what happens later on in the film, and you then have to like you're like, okay, well, George Clooney's in this, this might be interesting, we might see some heroic acts, and then all of a sudden, what happens, and then Sandra Bullock is now dealing with what she has to do to survive. So, I spoiled it without spoiling, I guess.
Which we do spoil on here, Will. So you're welcome to spoil. Just give the spoilers warning.
I mean, this movie. Where do you guys draw the line on spoilers? Because seriously, this movie's
We don't
almost
it.
This
10
movie's
years
at
old.
least the movie's almost 10 years old. We
And
yeah,
we don't
so
have
The
to-
tags for the show say spoiler, and we do have a spoiler alert warning, but we warn everybody. We
Okay.
just try to say spoiler and then go into it.
Yeah, I don't even need to get to that level though. The second use was, for me, it was only good in well, actually, I didn't really like it. Having two daughters in the era we grow up in now, it's that second use of him kind of was this thing where somehow she had to have it mansplained to her, even if it's subconscious or a manifestation. So, for me, it was a little contrite. However, especially since the moment he makes a second appearance, I'm like, no, just no, that's not no. And sure enough, no, it isn't. So it's just one of those things where somebody in the executive chain just said, how much are we paying Clooney for this? And we've only got him in how long it is? We need one more Clooney, please.
Yeah.
And they caved. That's what it was.
I agree with that. I think if they had just done like a flashback of maybe a moment they had on the ground together or something, or maybe a memory, and they made it clear it was a memory rather than this thing that it is, I think it would have worked better for that. And that's the only thing that I really
I can take that. I can take that. I can take a flashback. Like, he didn't have to like pop up in a hallucination. But but I feel like with her character, she's such a weak character to start off with. Like, she's such a, and I'm sorry to say that, but she grows. Like, I can say that she gets a little stronger towards the end, and that's nice to see. But in the beginning, she's very dry and boring for the most part. So Clooney's character is the gravitas, I guess you could say, in that moment. Like, she gets there eventually, but so I figured they brought that scene in to rally her. So that's why I said that it was quote unquote needed, because like it rallied her. Now, if they had a flashback, like Mr. Snippet said, then that could be another way. Like, if she fell asleep and had like a dream, of them communicating on the ground or something like that, then that, to me, that still could have worked, because she needed a rallying. That's why I said the scene was okay.
But you know how many
Especially-
times they do that trope where it's like the
Yeah.
the main character is about to die? I mean, we just saw that in Shang-Chi too. He's in the water, he's having, that moment, and then of course the Great Protector comes.
Well, but
It's one of
but
those yeah.
in this case though, this was really a thing that's where the character did need an uplift, because she was just resigning herself to her fate. Let's cut life supply, and I'm getting shortwave radio with some guy somewhere, and I'm hearing his life, so at least there's some human connection as I go.
Mhm.
So that's why they really needed that sharp left hook, because and so what better way than oh,
Yeah.
look, Clooney is still here.
Right.
It
And-
could have
and
been
I-
done. It could have been done in a different way, but she needed a rallying. She was just resigning to die. The movie would have been quite short if she died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing. That when you get involved with this movie and its premise, you're like, I'm just going to tell you right now, if she's not walking on terra firma by the end of this thing, I'm gonna have words with somebody.
I'm glad.
Yeah, but
I
you know
will-
what? If she wouldn't have got made it to land,
Mhm.
and that would have been the end of the movie, and you would have just rolled with that do 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 do, like it's just game over. This movie would have been talked about more,
That's fair.
Honestly,
because it would have
I
probably
agree.
upset a lot of people, and I think people would have
I
watched it
agree.
just to be upset.
If she would have died on impact, or died because of like it blew up or the fire or
Oh,
whatever.
all the
I,
odds that she survives and she just hits a cliff.
oh my gosh, listen, I would
I
have
want that
I would
alternate
have
ending.
loved it. I would have loved it if she would have died because she had this great speech at the end and she's like, two possible outcomes. If this happens,
You
fine. If
would have
this
loved if
happens,
she would have died.
whatever. I would have loved it if she would have died. I was really hoping for a death in this, like a everybody died because it's space and it's impossible and everybody doesn't survive.
Right.
Like if she would have died and went out like a champ, like the champ that she was in that moment, I would have been like, this is aces of a film.
I mean, honestly speaking, they set this up to try and make it so that she's a. And by the way, I want to say, I really like the movie. I enjoyed sitting there watching it with my wife.
too.
Had a good time.
I
But
didn't at all.
but there are certain elements that they put in that the only reason they're in the backstory of this character is because, you know, she is somebody who, if she doesn't return, it doesn't matter. There is no one to remember her,
Mhm.
no one to care, and she's a character that has nothing to live for but for
Nope.
the sake of living.
Right.
So I mean, and again, those are just, they felt like they're elements that were put in there just for that reason, just so that I can make some type of connection or want to reach out more to this person. But again, I really enjoyed the movie.
See, I did too, but it's these little things that sometimes kind of pick away at you that we kind of get into these. Here's a fun aside and kind of a weird throwback. Did you guys know that Ed Harris is in the film?
Is he the voice?
He's the voice of
Is he-
Houston.
Oh man,
Oh,
that's
that's
a nice
cool.
touch.
Yes, it is. I thought it was
It's
great.
crazy how attracted to Ed Harris I am. I really shouldn't be that attracted to a man that's like bald headed and things like that. No offense, Will. You're a handsome
None
guy
taken.
yourself. Snitty, you're always covered up. Get out of here. But yeah, I'm like
Oh
really
man,
attracted to Ed Harris. I don't know why, whatever.
Hey, no, that's we all have our things. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's some
I
of
was-
the things I heard people like Neil deGrasse Tyson go after this film a little bit, mostly for the inaccuracies, and
God.
he's known for doing that. And I appreciate what he does because he's trying to just make filmmakers try to make things a little more accurate in the background, that's fine, especially Starfields. But in this one, there's some movement and motion. It kind of harkens back to like Mission to Mars, where Clooney's floating off and she can't bring him back because why? Because his inertia is too much, but they're connected. Like it drives me nuts in those situations. I'm
They're
like,
not connected. They weren't connected though. Like
yeah,
she
she
could
was
like
buckled to him.
no, she wasn't. What do you mean? Like when she was holding him before he died or whatever?
Yeah, when he was
that,
like, "Oh, I gotta unhook and you can let me die."
No. They weren't buckled. Their tether snapped, and what she was holding, he was clipped to, but she wasn't buckled to it. She was holding it with her bare hands, and he was like, "I'm too heavy, and this rope is too. It's like it's loosening, and it can't hold us both." That's why
See-
when he let go, she just flew back.
And that was the moment where I had my first disconnect with the movie because I'm like, this is space.
Right.
So technically,
Yeah.
shouldn't she just be able to get, she
Whoosh,
just needed
like,
one
pull him.
big jerk. And then she
Yes,
could have
oh.
kept one big jerk.
Same thing in Mission to Mars. Tim Robbins, spoiler alert, Tim Robbins dies in Mission to Mars. And he dies for reasons he doesn't need to. And it drives me insane in space movies when they do this because gravity works a very specific way. And when there's lack
Okay.
of gravity, it works in a very specific way. So anyway, it's a little thing, but it takes me out like it did Will.
But here's the thing. I feel bad because like if you hadn't seen this movie until now, when China launched that rocket at the satellite that they did, and there was like all that like uproar about like the debris and everything, this is what I thought about when that happened. I'm like, oh geez, I hope Senator Bullock's not in space. It's like
She's safely down in LA.
Jeff Bezos took her up there, and all of a sudden the debris comes.
Yeah, because anything bad that can happen to her happened in this film.
Mhm.
It was like this is her first mission, probably her last, because I wouldn't touch space ever again in my life.
She
I
didn't
would
really leave much
resign.
to go back to when it comes to space station stuff.
I mean, but hey, I'm done for life. But like everything that could happen to her happened to her. When she landed and she popped the thing open and then all the water came in, I'm like, is she gonna drown now? I'm like, what else can go wrong? And then she
Fade
was
to
like,
black.
fade to black and it's over. And then like she's floating and I'm like, you have bad luck. Something's gonna eat you. Get out the water. You don't know what these waters are.
Watch out for the
It's just-
megalodon.
I like that she landed in water so that even then she still was suspended slightly in kind of an anti-grav situation and still had to climb out and get to land. So she still hadn't gotten away from that floating feeling.
yeah.
It's a subtle thing, but I thought about it watching it this time. I don't know. There's not a lot of dialogue in this film, so it kind of
Mm-mm.
there's not a lot of character analysis. It's much more just how did the story do and is it good special effects? Yeah, check. You know, I don't know.
I really enjoyed the visuals. I thought they were beautiful. I thought like the different shots were great.
Mm-hmm.
There were moments that I enjoyed, but overall, I didn't particularly care for this film. If I was stack them against the other three films, this film held no weight compared to the other films.
Oh, sure. Well, there's a lot more
And I-
dialogue, a lot more story.
And even with like not even a lot of dialogue, like for the most part, you know, segue a little bit. The Martian, Matt Damon was talking to himself throughout the whole thing, and I enjoyed that better than watching her float around confused. You know what I mean? Like he was just like talking crap about his crew and they weren't there to hear, and I enjoyed that. And I just didn't. I connected with him more than I connected with her, and I felt bad about that because I like Sandy Bullock, and I just
So maybe this movie would have been better if we had her only doing her mission specialist stuff, which was obviously fixing the Hubble Space Telescope, and we could have had her like get stranded on the Hubble, and then like the shuttle had gotten away, and they like had to work their way back to her, and then her talking to herself would have been a little bit more interesting because she would have been talking about her work. I don't know.
in comparison to the other movies, this movie was only 1:30, and the other ones were like 2 hours and some change. They could have gave me 20 more minutes of background story on her.
Sure.
They could have gave me 20 more minutes of her being on Earth, maybe her daughter dying, maybe this is why she got into NASA to get farther away from the world, something to make me feel connected to her. But to start this off with her already in space with like they gave me two sides of the same coin. One was new, one was old. Like I knew Clooney was gonna die. This was literally his last walk, and they kept saying it. His last walk, literally
Mm-hmm.
his
Let's
last
talk
walk.
about projection.
You know, like thanks guys. So I don't know. They didn't give me anything. If a film is supposed to be like meat and potatoes, and you're supposed to be full, I only got potatoes from her. There was no meat.
Not even like a meat
So-
gravy.
Nah, and if it was dry and they have no sauce, no
No
seasoning.
salt, no pepper. It was just
Jake, come on, Will.
potatoes.
Just
Come on,
potatoes.
Will, just potatoes.
No, there's no side dishes on this.
It's funny you're talking about potatoes. When
Oh,
we're
good
we're
point.
going to get into
Oh.
potatoes here soon. Thank you
Too
for
bad.
the
Thanks, Blind
for,
Biggie. Look
for
at
the
you.
subscription, sir. For the let's see, both gifted. Wow. So we got two
Yeah,
new.
look at you.
We've got Taylor is now a part of the Real Study, and Just Jessie, who has been, I got to shout her out, the longest Real Study viewer. She was actually an original viewer
Has
back
she?
when this
Is
was.
she longer than Joker?
She has been. She was on my very first episode when it was just Mr.
Oh,
Snippets.
wow.
So
Cool.
thank you for
Awesome.
that, even though she might not be here. Thank you for that.
I would like to say that Taylor and Jesse are in the real university.
The real
I'm working
university.
on
I like that. I like that. Anyway, okay.
You can see her.
So this movie actually gets a decent rating on IMDb. So the audience rating is a 7.7, which I think is interesting, and it gets a 96 on Metascore, which I think is also interesting because those are higher numbers than I expect from the word of mouth I've heard about this film. So
I think it's just because it's beautiful. I don't think it has anything
Yeah.
to do with like the story itself. I think it's because it's beautiful. And if I'm being honest, it's way more beautiful than the other two movies. Like
Mm.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all because of Alfonso Cuarón's vision, and I
Yeah.
don't, unfortunately I didn't catch who the DP was on this, but
I'll look right now.
they really, I mean, although when we get into one of the other ones, that movie had very strong stylistic choices as well that I really kind of dug the consistency of throughout. But anyway, we'll get to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Like it was meant to be a spectacle. It's not a deep like wanting to know more about the story, more about the characters, anything more. And the plot didn't. Again, you don't have to like the story. You don't have to like everything, but you can say at least when you watch it, you're like, it was stunning, it was beautiful. And I think that's what they were really going for. And of course, that's what gets considered for Oscars nowadays. As long as it's not Marvel or Star Wars or something. But anyway, it was definitely beautiful. And I will say, I have gone back and watched this film, especially in 3D. I have a projector screen, so like I will go turn all the lights off and just enjoy it because it's still beautiful.
When
And
I move to New York, you're gonna have to let me come down and visit so we can watch this one in 3D because there are only a handful of movies.
absolutely,
Avatar was one I watched in 3D and I thought it was worth the while.
Oh, it's
Um,
New York
oh
now?
yeah,
I thought it was LA.
it's one or the other. Apparently the DP for this film was Emmanuel Lubezki, also known for The Revenant, Children of Men, Birdman, which all makes sense because those are all beautiful films. That being said, there was one thing I was going to ask in there. It slipped away. That's okay. I think we can easily move on to a rating of this particular film.
That was a pun you didn't mean to make.
Did I?
It slipped away.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was funny.
yeah. It didn't make that much of an impact on you though.
Yeah. Ooh.
I'm going to rock it to the next segment if I may.
I'm surprised that Lala didn't shred it more.
Oh, boy. Here we go. We are
Hey!
a pun show, by the way, Will. So feel
Yes.
free to rock the puns. That being said, the way we do reviews, as far as the way we rate things, is we'll do a 1 to 10 scale. You decide your scale. So if you think things can be a 10 because you like to rewatch them, or you think nothing can be a 10 because there's no such thing as perfect, it's up to you. And we also rate things based upon what maybe our kid self, our 12-year-old self, may have thought had they got a chance to watch this movie. I know you've seen us do the show before, but I wanted to put it out there for you. So why don't we have Will go first? Give us your 2 ratings.
See, I always think of my child self, and you have to realize my child self loved Star Trek the Motion Picture. My child self loved Flash Gordon. So, like, my child self, the rating is 10 always on that one. It's always going to be 10 because unless I hated it, apparently I loved it.
That's right.
But for this one, as an adult, it's a solid 7. It's not quite peeking out of the top because it's so niche and its presentation and everything else, but it's definitely got rewatchability. Would it make my library if I were going on a flight and I needed stuff to distract me? No. But it's still a good solid 7. You know, it's a Saturday afternoon, nothing better to do. Let's throw on Gravity.
I like it. Mr. Marvelite.
So my rating for Speed 3 in orbit. Oh, I'm sorry, Gravity.
That's
Uh,
hilarious.
No, literally, like for
That's
me,
cold, man.
it's watchable. It's rewatchable. You know, I've watched worse with Sandra Bullock, like Speed 2, and I enjoyed it. It's rewatchable for me for the visuals. I would definitely watch it again, especially with 3D and Stibbits. If you ever come down, we'll watch it along with everything else that
It's
you
ever
could
made.
want to
Yeah,
watch
we'll
on.
just sit there and
That-
binge movies for days.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, because we don't have live.
Yes, Lala, you will absolutely
So
be there.
yeah, so as a kid myself, I would have probably given this probably a 7 or probably 7 or 8, just because it was slow paced for me and I needed action and movement and dialogue more than what I got. But for me, it's still
Wait, movement? Bro.
well, I mean, like moving the storyline. Like, yes, there
Oh,
were
not
things
physical
going on, but I
movement.
mean, like
Because
actually,
Oh,
like
okay.
yeah, that's the
'Cause I'm
dialogue.
like, this movie won't stop moving.
They should just call it
Believe
No,
me, I
motion.
it didn't
know.
stop. It was
Yeah.
just like orbiting. Um, but for me, I would say probably about a 7.5. I'll say 7, just be conservative. I'll watch it again. I do still recommend it for people, just because it's beautiful. But yeah, the storyline's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be.
Sure. All right.
Does it?
Black Girl Marvel.
12-year-old me would have thought it was beautiful, and again, 12-year-old me would have loved to see like a woman on screen. Um, she would have liked a black woman, but that's neither here nor there. But 12-year-old me would have probably given this like an 8 or a 9 because of just how beautiful it was. And I was kind of fascinated with like space back then. Like I used to always look at the stars and stuff like that. So like I think I would have given this like a like an 8 or a 9. But me today, I originally gave it a 5.
Okay.
But I give it a 6 simply because of the beauty.
All right.
So it gets 1 more point because of the beauty. But this movie was terrible to me. I was just like, what are we doing here? Like what was the point of this? Just to see this bland woman persevere. Like I just
Well, she's not bland at the end. She's persevered.
it took so long. I don't know. Like I said, if I would have had more to latch on to her, I didn't have a lot to care about. And you start to make me care about her at the end when she gets a little gumption, and now she's like, the movie ends on her feet. I'm pretty sure Quentin Tarantino loved that ending, but yeah. So yeah, six.
Six
Five.
it is.
Yeah, six.
Five or six. Somewhere.
6. You said 6 first. You can't go back.
She's kind of somewhere in the 5 or 6 range. It probably depends,
5.5.
Yeah.
5.7.
You said 9. No, you said 9.
That's cute.
5.9.
So,
Yeah.
That being said, myself, I would say this is an 8, mostly because again, I love being able to just kind of feel what it would be like to be up there. So there's a lot of just visual enjoyment that I get out of the film. Kind of everything everybody's been saying, but a little bit more so on that personal level. That being said, there are parts of the film that drive me nuts that we described, and so I don't think you could ever get a 10, even if I rewatch it in 10 years. Kid me, NASA, space, 10. Will had a very good point. It's kind of just most of my movies like this are going to be 10s. Marvel movies are 10s. Like my kid self would have loved them all. So it is what it is.
Kid
Right.
me loved Space Camp. I mean,
yes.
come on.
Oh,
I love that movie. I watch it and War Games on a regular basis. Anyway, because they're both brilliant. That being said,
Oh man, War Games, one of the greatest moments in cinema history. Mr. Potato Head.
I love that
Sorry.
part. And it's
Never
so
seen it.
subtle. You've never seen War Games?
no.
Somebody needs to redeem War Games. Okay,
hold on. I got the points for it.
We're also going to be watching One
So
Flew
do
Over the
I.
Cuckoo's Nest because Lala has not seen that as well. So we're going to have a classics night. We'll get to that though.
There's a double header for you.
That would be an interesting night. Plus, we already have Smoking Aces, so we already have 3 movies. This is going to be a weird night.
My favorite nights.
Did that even work?
Oh,
I didn't hear it.
Self and Wall Keys just beat me to it.
No.
Mickey.
I didn't hear it though. That's weird. I hope it
No, he
played.
didn't. He did a sound alert. You killing me, Smalls.
Wait, no.
Yeah, it's his sound alert for his voice. So, by the way, Thoughtful
Oh.
Walton Keys, if everybody doesn't know, is the voiceover guy for the Real Study. So, the intro and all that good stuff. People are going nuts with the tickets now. That's awesome. Okay, we're gonna
I
move
don't know
into.
I don't know what's going on. My sound alerts aren't working either. It's kind of weird.
So
Okay.
I think it's because I switched to OBS and it changed things up a lot.
Mm.
So it is what it is. War Games has now been redeemed. So now we have Smoking Aces, War Games, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't think we're going to do those all in one night. That would be a weird night. That being said, we're going to move into Interstellar. So Interstellar, 2014 film, produced and directed by Christopher Nolan, starring Matthew McConaughey and Jessica Chastain.
All right.
And Anne Hathaway. Those are the 3 main actors. There's some Michael Caine in there as well, and we'll get to the other person soon because that's important to
Oh
the
yeah,
story.
young Timothy Chalamet was also. In
Oh yeah,
this.
like a brand new Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah, like I was like, oh, it's that boy from that thing. Look
Right.
at him, and I was like, all excited.
I did the same thing. That's even in like every word for word in my head. I was. And then just like suddenly he became Casey Affleck, and you're like, what happened?
Right.
That's not
Yeah.
a transition that's
Yeah,
natural.
exactly. It's like, all right.
And,
Anyways.
and an angry Casey Affleck, like the whole movie. Too.
Yeah.
So the story is, I'll do the Mr. Marvelite thing. So the story is that it is in the near future, and the world is basically no longer able to grow crops because of a disease called blight. And blight is basically killing off all vegetation on the planet, and there's really only 2 crops left at the beginning of the movie, okra and corn. And our characters are dealing with basically a Dust Bowl 2.0. And that's kind of where we pick up in the story. That said, I think I picked this one, so I don't normally go first. I'm going to have Mr. Marvelite go first this time around.
Okay, so I rolled my eyes when Snippet said to do this one because I initially did not like this film when I first watched it. In fact, there are certain films that I have never been able to sit through the first sitting, and it's very rare. And this was one of them. The other one was like Contraband with Mark Wahlberg, and that makes perfect sense. But I felt like this was more pretend at the time. I'm going back to what before. I felt like this movie was more pretentious than anything with what was the film before it?
Gravity.
Gravity.
No, what Nolan did before this one.
Inception?
Oh, Inception.
Yes, Inception.
Inception.
Like I felt like it was extremely pretentious. I thought that it went too far, and I felt like this was like Nolan's worst work at the time. And I watched it again, and I actually really appreciated it a lot more this time. I will say I did speed up the playing because I needed it to go a little bit faster for me. I don't know if that helped, but um, I think that the cast of characters, and I actually identified better with the robot this time than I did previously.
Case or
Like
Tars?
I hate which one did he rebuild at the end?
Tars.
Tars.
Tars, yes. So yeah, I liked Tars. Um, and I felt more with the whole um relationship with the daughter this time, and I think it's because I'm a dad. So it was really hard, the idea of leaving her for the sake of saving her, and then having her think that, he was failing her because maybe he knew that there was no redemption. And it really, I mean, like, just that turmoil of knowing that your your child thinks you're a failure, like your child thinks you're the villain, and that struck me. And then at that ending where she's talking to him, and said, he's like, I'm your ghost, and she said, no one believed me, but I always knew because my dad made a promise to me. I crumbled at that point. I looked over at my kid playing Roblox, and I'm like, I love you, kid. But yeah, I enjoyed the film a lot more this time than last.
Absolutely. Will Wilkins, what is your first take on Interstellar?
Wow. Somehow, it is one of those movies that I have just avoided for the longest time, and I don't know why. It may have been because there was some critical take on the ending of the film. Like the whole part of the last third act.
Mhm.
But for me, I don't know if it was if that I had perceived that or what, but I just completely avoided this movie, and I'm in a way glad I did, because it may be the certain level of maturity I've gotten to, similar to Mr. Marvelite, that this movie really hit hard for me. And I didn't have any problems with the playback speed. I didn't have any problems with the way the action was represented, because the way I was being told this story just had me gripped from the very beginning. And I appreciated certain little things. You could tell this is a sci-fi person telling the story and wanting to tell it right when everything in space has no sound. And that had me, the minute that happened,
Mhm.
this movie had my heart already.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way the story unfolded, I loved the way it was told. It kind of had hints of Memento thrown in there, just in the way you're experiencing the story. So in that way, it's kind of a tribute to the earlier work. And the story as told, I just loved, because in the end, even though this is a story about science, it still also is somehow strongly grounded in faith. The daughter is able to do what she does because she believes. She has
Right.
the faith in this. And overall, spoilers, the ending of this movie, the way somehow they enter time as a physical dimension, and the idea that for me that was extrapolated was that mankind in the future did something to make it possible for mankind of the past to save mankind. And it was all decided, it was this one focal point, this one person we can communicate with in this way is this kid, and now it's through her dad. And then kind of both of them making that realization on their impact
Mm-hmm.
in this story. It just yeah, this movie really hit hard for me. I really, really enjoyed the heck out of it, and the visual style that it had throughout. Almost in some ways, every time we're outside of a spaceship, it's shot at an angle that you would see from a mission camera.
Right.
So, yeah, it was just it probably didn't affect anyone else here the way it did me, but it was
Oh yeah, it was
really,
really good.
really good for me.
Lala, Black Girl Marvel, what was your first impression of Interstellar?
Um, I cried buckets at this movie.
Buckets.
So buckets, like buckets of tears. Like I see why. Like okay, I avoided this film because at the time I think Matthew McConaughey was a hot piece of acting property, and sometimes when you saturate the market too much for me, um I don't want to see you and stuff, even if I think it's like interesting. I'll just ignore it because it's like it's too much of you. You're
Ryan
every.
Reynolds.
I mean, you know, but that's a whole different story because he plays the same character, whereas Matthew kind of doesn't. But it was a too much saturation, I think, during that time, so I kind of ignored it. So watching it now, um, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it had a great story. It had a great beginning, a great end. I love stories that round like there's nothing left open for you to be like, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? They connected every dot, even at the end, by making it so that his daughter is like, you don't have to stay here and watch your child die. Go to Brand and help her start what this is essentially, you know what I mean, like essentially go to the past and make sure that this happens so that it happens, like it's infinite, so it always happens, you know. So like I love that take on it. I love that um his genius like ran down to his kid genetically. I think that like she's probably smarter than him, you know, and I love that she was the one that had to figure it out. Um I really, really love that they got to see each other one more time. I think that's the part that really got me was that like he because watching Matthew McConaughey watching all this footage of his son go from being this age to getting a girlfriend to seeing his grandchild to
Oh yeah.
the emotion that he went through um watching those videos to me was just like a master class in acting in my book. So like I was really, and y'all know me, I like, you know, I want to be an actor. I act, I like to call myself an actor. So like watching that was just like me mentally taking notes on how to connect to a scene. And I just thought this movie was really well done. I felt like every cast member played their part to perfection. I felt like the story worked its way out. You can't go wrong with Michael Caine, I don't think. That's just my personal opinion.
He's the British Morgan Freeman. Like,
No, he really is.
Yeah.
Like he really is. So for me, the moment I hear his voice, I'm like, this gonna be good, ain't it? This gonna be a good little film. And I just thought it was really well done. You hardly see films that focus on like, well, not just like the '90s, but like you hardly see films that focuses on like father and daughter. It's always like father and son, you
mm-hmm.
know, like my boy
Mhm.
and all this kind of stuff. Like to watch a father and daughter type of film made me feel good. Like if my dad was still alive, I would have loved to watch this with him. I don't know if he would have understood it, but he would have watched it because I asked him to. So like it's just one of those things, and I think he would have really got caught up at the end. I just think it was a really good movie. It sadly I watched these movies backwards. This would have been a nice palate cleanser after Gravity, but I watched it first. So yeah, I really enjoyed Interstellar. This is a movie that I probably would watch again.
I'm gonna ask
Question
that.
for you.
Oh
I
no,
think you're
please.
gonna ask the same question. Go ahead.
I want to know what order we all watched them in actually, because I think that has a weird effect on
I
how we view
watched
them.
them. I watched them in order of time. So I watched Interstellar, The Martian, Gravity.
Gravity came out first, though.
No, I meant like
Oh, length.
film time, length
I see.
time. Yeah.
You did the long. I see what you're doing because you're trying to make sure that if I have to get to that movie, it's the shortest one. I can get to it at the end of the
Right,
week.
I can get to it at the end.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. How about
Saying
you?
I
Will?
went Gravity and then Interstellar.
And then The Martian.
Yeah.
Okay, so you watch them the way I watch them. How about you, Mr. Marvelite?
Yeah. So Gravity, Martian, Interstellar.
Interesting. I think that would have been the way to watch them, but that's just
And
me.
here's the thing, though. I was gonna ask. Like Marvel, do you think that because you watched Interstellar before Gravity, that may have affected your decision on the film?
Say that again.
You went from something so good from Interstellar to Gravity. Do you think you had more expectations for what you were watching, and so you may
Oh,
it may have determined because there have
no.
been times where I have watched films that we've planned out, and
Mhm.
sometimes the film that I watched before determines how much I like the next one.
I would say maybe 5% if I had to give it a percentage. But I kind of look at every movie as their own movie. Like that's kind of how I wanna. That's kind of how I look at everything. That's why some of the worst movies in the world, I'm like, that was pretty good. And people are like, what? Because I take it as its own merit. I take it as its own thing. Um, so no. So I would say like 5% because I will say there were moments
Okay.
where I was like, boy, this is boring. This is woof. These other ones weren't this boring. Talking about Gravity. So
Yeah.
I'll
All
say
right.
like
Okay.
5%.
All right.
Just
That can
curious.
happen though. That can happen. Okay,
How much
so
how much time did you guys put in between them? Because technically speaking, like I watched Gravity on a Saturday, then Interstellar. Well, okay, let's be honest. I watched Interstellar last night, and then I watched The Martian today. But I already knew what I was getting with The Martian, so I had a lot of space between the movies, essentially.
I watched them. I watched all three of them today, back to back to back.
oh
I only
wow.
had 2 hours. I only
Oh,
had 2 hours between.
oh,
I'll say like 2 hours and 15 minutes between The Martian and Gravity.
I feel so bad for picking The Martian now because man, that was a run for you. That was a run.
No, that was good though. But I mean, the Interstellar was almost a 3 hour film. I'm like, did you think it was a Marvel film? Calm down, Christopher Nolan. Like this
His
is
movies are all
very
two
long.
plus, kind of across the board.
No, they are like they really are. But this one was
Yeah.
like 257 or something like that. This was
Oh yeah,
very close to
it's
like three
definitely
hours.
long. So
I
the
still feel like half of this movie fit into the opening sequence of Gravity as we're waiting to see something on the
Mhm.
planet line. I don't maybe it's that time dilation they were talking about in Interstellar, but I kind of felt that way
so
watching
time moves
Gravity.
slower when you watch Gravity. Is that what you're saying?
Holy heck, did it ever.
Uh,
I got a power nap in there and somehow didn't miss a single thing.
I like it. So for myself, this is I'm not I wouldn't consider myself the biggest Nolan fan, but there are few and far between Nolan films that I don't enjoy, and I am a fan of Inception. So when he came out with this, I was like, wait, Nolan and space, I'm in. The things that I like about Nolan's productions are he is a practical effects guy. Everything in this movie, with the exception of the black hole and the space, distant space stuff, practically all practical effects. The spaceships were all built. And most of the cool shots on the like dark planets are in Iceland, with maybe turning some things over to make them look more spacey. But he does that. Even the TARS robots were half built and run by humans, and then they were removed from the picture with green screen. But he does a
Out
really
of
really
this
good
whole
job of that.
movie, those robots were like the boldest choice in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's when I first ran up against it, but then the practicality of it kept revealing itself as the
Oh yeah.
movie goes
Yeah.
on.
And Towers' personality really draws you in. I love the 90% honesty, the 90, let's make it 55. I love that kind of interaction between
Discretion is involved.
right. Cooper and Tars' relationship is one of the better relationships in the film. But what's interesting about the way that Nolan approaches films is that I swear, now that I've kind of looked at most of his body of work, the dude is obsessed with time, and that's really every one of his
Yeah.
movies is about time. All of them are about time. This one is very Memento-like. I agree with you, but I also think that it also has some tenanty feels to it, where things are running backward and forward. When he's going back through the wormhole after being in the singularity, that's very Tenant like, because he's crossing paths again with himself, which is really bizarre. And any movies that go into that, starting with like 2001 to now with Interstellar, draw me in immediately. And that's where I am a sci-fi fan. Like people ask me my favorite genre, it's sci-fi, and it's for this kind of stuff where you can get into really raw, like deep thinking and philosophy along with cool space stuff. That's me. I digress. We can open it up and start dissecting this wonderful story, if you guys
Yeah.
would like.
I'm just gonna say my Marvel nerd heart, like my ears perked up when they called it the Tesseract. I was
Yeah.
like, hey.
Now
Okay,
you
I'm
know what
good.
a Tesseract is, yes? A real
Yes.
Tesseract?
Yes. And do not call me out on it because if I say it wrong, I'm
No,
not
no,
gonna-
no. I will explain it for the audience so that if somebody doesn't know, it's just simple. There we go. A tesseract is basically a fourth dimensional object that you cannot physically see because, well, we don't see in fourth dimensions. So it's a scientific concept that essentially helps us visualize the difference between 2 and 3D worlds. So we also visualize a 4D world. It's very watch a little Cosmos by Carl Sagan. He explains it nicely.
Okay.
I'm serious. Just YouTube Carl Sagan explaining the Tesseract. He does a very good job at it. That being said, the fact that they added the Tesseract to this film and that we got to see inside a singularity is something that very few films are willing to do. They just because they can't get it right, and I think
Mhm.
that's something they did right.
Well, I read that Christopher Nolan pretty much hits it out of the park scientifically. That a lot of his assumptions, his speech, things about black holes, I read that a lot of his stuff was very spot on, except for like the end where it got kind of like sci-fi. He was going back to see his child and all that kind of stuff. But like, but I read it that he was actually spot on with a lot of his scientific stuff. So that's
like
nice that he put the research into that. So
Well, you can tell he's a parent. This movie was written by a parent. Like, there's no way. I did want to mention that quote. The quote that obviously Michael Caine says, that "Don't go into the darkness" quote, is profound, fits the movie perfectly, and if you think about it too long, it'll make you really cry because like, oh, okay, I got to fight against the darkness myself. But the quote in the film that I think made me bawl, and I hope I just can read this without going through this again, because I read it to my wife. I was not a parent the last time I watched this movie, like Mr. Marvelite said,
Right.
and watching it this time, I have 2 girls. So yeah, it's like, yeah, and I wanted to go work for NASA. So like, okay, Coop, why are you trying to get into my head now? Essentially, is where I'm at. But there's this wonderful quote. Where is it?
well, Christopher Nolan is known for Inception. Okay.
Wait,
So,
are you saying he incepted Interstellar into my mind and then made me live the
yep,
life? Okay, I can
yep.
handle that. Okay,
And they wrote a story about it.
so he says that when he's talking about his wife, when he's talking to Murph, he says that he didn't understand what she meant before, but now that they had kids, she said, now we're just here to be memories for our kids. Once you're a parent, you're a ghost for your children's future. And that is profound and so true, and makes you take a step back. And I think we are going to get to that other character here soon when we talk about them going and landing on the different planets. Um, but it ties to everything that what was his name? What is his name? I don't want to ruin it. Is he even on the list here? Okay, Dr. Mann. Dr. Mann goes into that and says the last thing you see before you die is your children's face, and he's like creepily talking to him, like, "Did you see it? Are you seeing your children's face now?" And
He
it's
was
just
oh,
I really enjoyed that character that Matt Damon played. I really feel like he took that role specifically because it's different from what he usually does. He's usually like the everyman. I take care of people and I do this, but for him to kind of be like, I will sacrifice you for the fight for what I feel is the greater good for the whole, and just to be so creepy, to be like, you're not alone, just listen to my voice, like, you creepazoid. Just, but I like to think that his character is like, I said this to Blind Biggie in the comments, that I like to think that Matt Damon's Dr. Mann in the afterlife is the Martian. This is his afterlife we're watching, because not only is he in it, but also Jessica Chastain is in it. So I was like, this is his afterlife, and he's
it's the good
imagining,
version.
right? He's imagining himself like who I would have been if I would have never taken this mission. Maybe I should have taken that Mars mission.
It's
that
his
they,
next iteration through the good place.
oh,
yeah, yeah,
that's
I like
better.
that. I like that.
We're just
Oh,
watching
man.
different trolley scenarios with Matt Damon, basically.
Yeah, Matt
Yeah.
Damon's appearance in this movie, he's like, people have forgotten talented Mr. Ripley, and I'm bringing that energy back.
And he did. He did.
Yeah, that was also the only part of the movie that I kind of hit up against, other than, they were just trying to exemplify how much the true thought of dying in isolation could eat at one person's soul. But I found it also very interesting that all of the very over aggro, over dramatic, over action that is done is by the character that is named Dr. Mann. So in those final moments, he's like the kind of the vision of the worst of us possible
Mhm.
as a species. I'm like, is that coming into play? So that's the only reason why that segment kind of that's the only part that kind of stopped me for a moment. But it was also, to exemplify what kind of lengths he was willing to go to. It was an interesting twist that you didn't expect to see, especially after coming off of all of the information you're coming off of
Yeah.
between these 2 planets.
Right.
So it's like, gosh darn it, man.
Can we also just go back to recognize like how messed up Earth was at this time when they were like planning this?
Mhm.
first of all, there were the edited textbooks where the guy is standing right in front of them. He's been to space, and they're trying to say that space travel was
The
like
moon landing was a
propaganda
hoax.
against the Soviet Union.
Right.
You've
There was
got
some,
you've got
some weirdly prophetic stuff going on.
Right.
yeah
Mhm.
you've got the kid who's 15 years old, and they've already predetermined that he's going to be a farmer.
And he
They're
graduated
talking,
second in his class, by the way.
yeah.
He
They're
still wasn't
talking
smart enough for university, which makes no sense.
Right.
right. Well, because they're such limited, like it's got to be the
Yeah.
best of the
If
best.
he
But
wasn't
at the
number
same
one,
time,
blah blah blah. Yeah.
if you're going to university, what are you going to university for if they're not doing technology or
They need better
Right.
it's like
combines, man.
politics or yeah, I guess. But you just had like all of these things that were like the people just were like so messed up. Even his son, and as he's older, he doesn't want to leave the land. He's basically told, you stay here, your son's gonna die, and it's like, get out of my house. And it's like just the loss of like reality for these
Mhm.
people, that they just look at, we're just gonna survive because we'll just
He
pull
already
through
lost
and
a
get through it.
child. He
Yeah,
already lost a child too.
Yeah.
So it's like you already lost a child, and someone is telling you that your next child that's named after your father that you lost as well, essentially, is going to die, and you're still so prideful, or not even prideful. Maybe he's just traumatized himself because his daddy left when he was like 15.
Yeah, I think
You know?
I think he's really impacted by the
Yeah.
moment they lose communication, because from
Yeah.
that moment, he's lost some of his soul from that point.
Yeah, yeah. Especially since his wife was telling him too, like, you gotta let him go. And how do you tell somebody to let go of their father?
Not only
oh,
that,
and
but
about the
he's
idea that, well, go ahead.
no, he's on an Earth that is dying, and they know it. Like they know it's dying, and where's there to run? Like so he's done running. Why would you run from something that's going to kill everyone anyway? So
Oh
I,
my
I
but it was
get the
gosh,
sense of hopelessness.
and
Yeah,
that
and it
representation of dirt, just like the acceptance of
Yeah.
it in your life. I was like, oh man.
And how they
Yep.
prepare everything for it. We turn our plates over, our cups over, we wipe stuff down. Like it's just a normal routine to clear this stuff off of your system. And it's interesting because it's like Murph and the son Tom, I believe his name is,
Mhm.
they grew up in this, right? So their body is somehow like acclimated to it, but then like but his kids weren't.
Right.
His wife weren't. Like, it's just crazy, like genetics and how that stuff like works. And I don't know. This movie was interesting. You can like really dissect it. Like really
Let's go into the dust part.
MRI.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you're good.
No,
I was
no.
gonna say
Please.
the MRI machines, like they decommissioned them because they were letting
Yeah.
people die. NASA, they thought NASA wasn't being endorsed by the government because they refused to drop bombs on like entire like
Population
communities
centers.
because they were starving. I mean, like it was like it was cold and calculated how the world just looked at itself,
Right.
and just
Mhm.
didn't care. And we're we have those tendencies, as when we look at what we need, we're willing to cut other people off to get what those things are. And
I think that's where man comes back in. Is that was an embodiment of what it would be like if you took that
I mean,
concept of
just
the human
yeah.
and that selfishness and,
Yeah.
and made it a microcosm, and he just ran with it. Real quick, for the Dust Bowl portion of the film, that's actually real footage from a Ken Burns documentary, The Dust Bowl, and they used it in order to give that feeling of all of this realness. The only one person that it wasn't real was Ellen Burstyn, who played older Murph. They shot her footage to look identical to the Ken Burns documentary and then put it in there. But every other person is a real person that lived through the Dust Bowl.
Yeah, which is very cool. I thought that was very cool when I saw like those images of people talking about it. I would honestly feel like it was weird if I was able to traverse like, time and space and then pop up in the future to see what happens. Like, so to go back to a replica of my home, but way better, to see footage of people talking about a time that I did live in, but I don't remember certain parts because I wasn't there for it. Like it was I would, because he said it. He's like, I didn't come back here to sit in the past or where I started. Like I want to see where we're going, and to see them playing baseball and like their homes are like up top. It's just to me it was just like so interesting, and like I don't know. It was just I was like, I would love to live enough to see where we end up, but because of COVID, I feel like we might be the Dr. Mans of this world, because
Cool.
you could see then that humans were like sticking to very stupid ideals or ideologies or whatever, and that's what kind of like what this film kind of represented was sticking to stupid ideologies. Why do you care if my daughter believes in a man on the moon, or like why does that factor into you teaching my child? Like, no, I get it, like she punched a kid because of that belief, and
But
you
you
need
can
to
have a
Because they
belief
want
and not
everybody to
punch a kid.
settle.
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, you can have a belief and not punch a kid. So like, okay, I'll teach my kid that, but like, don't say that like you're like pretty much taking a book from my child because you don't believe.
Right.
And like, that's crazy to me.
Well, they want them to look into the stars. They want them to look at the Earth because that's all they've got left, basically.
And they
So,
barely had that. Why not look towards the
yeah.
future? Like, and this was the kid that you tried to censor is the kid that saved your world. You know,
That's
like
true.
That's hindsight,
who
though.
do
She doesn't
you
know that.
know?
That's not
No,
fair to
I
that
know,
character.
but no. But I mean, but I don't know. I don't want to be fair to the character
Could you
because
imagine she didn't get it? She didn't get a place in the shuttle. That teacher.
you know what I mean. Like,
Oh, we're so sorry. It's
if I
all
was Murph,
propaganda.
we
You
would
can't.
She
Yeah.
exactly.
died
You
of
can't.
lung cancer well before that.
Honestly, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't even have agreed to go because she wouldn't have believed that that's where they were taking them anyway. So she would have just been like, "You're a lie, and you're not doing this." But I'm just thinking like,
The Earth is
in
flat.
our world,
Dust is good for you.
how many
Dude.
teachers have segued or like pushed aside a future president or a future engineer or a future whatever that could improve our world simply because they didn't believe in what this child believed or how this child thought. Like, that was my issue with that one scene. I was like, I've seen
The
teachers like that in my own schools, and I wanted to
the
punch that teacher.
only way they could have gone farther into the idea of just like this crazy mentality of just accepting everything is like, well, God made dirt, so dirt don't hurt. And just
Wow.
Oh my god.
So can
How
we?
long have you been sitting on that? Where's
for
the
about
eject button?
since Lala started talking, just a few.
So I want to get a little bit into
Yeah.
the science side of this, and then I also want to talk about the gravitas of the actors that they chose, because obviously choosing a huge actor to do the spoily part is a great one. But not just, we haven't even mentioned John Lithgow is a brilliant
Oh yeah.
actor, and he plays such a small part, but such a significant part, because just the little back and forth between him and Coop are really great and really build out those relationships nicely and help you understand Murph even more. Um, the other, who was the other big one? Oh, Bill Irwin actually is Tars, and you guys know Bill Irwin. I'm certain you do. Um, let's see, what would be the one movie you guys know him from? Absolutely. Oh, he's from Star Trek, so you guys would know him from Star Trek. Let's see, I would hope. I know that Ray would, but she just left, so she wouldn't be able to help me out here. But still, the sheer number of people that Chris Nolan can basically say, "Hey, come act in my movie," even if it's a small part, can really add an element to the film as you're watching it. You're like, I don't necessarily even need an extra bit of story. That's John Lithgow. I'm good to go. That's Michael Caine, like we were saying already. I'm good to go. That's Matt Damon. So I think they were buying, to your point, Will, they were using Matt Damon as a sense to like, they don't need to explain this part. It's Matt Damon. And that happens in movies a lot, I think. The science.
How?
Oh, please, go
But
ahead.
still, that whole section with Matt Damon and being crazy. I know they've just been through a lot of other stuff in this movie, but I mean, this guy is broadcasting creep all over the place.
Mhm.
How is it they're even
Then
just
nobody
proceeding
picked
to
that
walk
up.
next to him?
Mhm.
Yeah, then nobody picked that up. Yeah.
You
Because
say even
honestly,
before
for
he
me,
was dishonest, even like right in the beginning when they first open it up and he's hugging McConaughey? Is that what you mean, Will?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite scenes, though, if I'm being honest. Like, when he popped it open and he saw a human. Now, I think that was genuine because
hmm
he was by himself
Yeah.
for so long. I feel like that was genuine. I just love that scene. It kind of like made me tear up a little bit. I was like, boy, he's been isolated. Like, geez, Louise. But
But
even as they kept going, he's very off kilter, and nobody quite picked up on that. Like, he's very something didn't seem right, and I guess you could chalk that up to like, well, he's been alone for a while, and maybe that's it. But I wouldn't have like turned my back on him, is what I'm saying. Like,
Well, he
Well,
gave it away at the beginning when he was talking, and he's like, "Why did you decommission your unit?" And he said it misappropriately identified
Amino
organic
compounds,
material
right?
as silica. Like, it was basically saying
hmm
it's not recognizing anything. And he made all of
right.
this stuff up, and of course the things decommissioned. He's like, well, don't access this, don't go into the archives. And
I mean, let's also not forget this guy went into the big nap having sabotaged the droid, the robot, so that if it's going to be powered up, it's going to go kaboom. So he's already even going in here going, if anybody comes and wakes me up from this, I've got to make sure I can get their ship somehow.
Right.
I don't, it was just,
Yeah.
after you get through the
Because
event,
he
it's
planned
just
this
so
for-
creepy.
He planned this for
Yep.
years, and if you look at it, like if he pretty much told us that Coop was going to survive because he's a father and he has something to fight for. So I knew somewhere he was going to die because like you just told us what was going to happen. But he's been plotting this since probably him sending false data back to Earth. And he's like, if
Yep.
anybody ever comes here to find me, I need a way out because this place isn't livable. And honestly, the whole time they were around there, I'm like, do y'all really think this is livable?
Yeah, I definitely wonder that.
The clouds were ice.
I know the moment he
Right,
ran into
I
a
was
cloud
like-
should have been a big clue.
I was like, okay, guys.
There's also the fact that he knew the information from Dr. Brand originally, and that it was false information. So he already knew that this was bullshit and that it wasn't going to matter anyway. So once he realized his planet sucked, that he didn't need an excuse. He knew he had to get off that planet to
Right.
finish his mission.
And
So
here's
he's like
my
an
thing.
anti-villain in that way, where like he still has the
He
right
is.
intentions, but for the absolute
But he's
wrong
going
reasons.
about it the wrong. He's going about it the wrong way. But my thing is this: obviously, we had a team with us. You can just come back with us.
Right.
You don't have to kill us or maroon us on this planet.
Is he
Just
trying
be
to
like-
ruin us? No, he already is marooning us. Yeah.
Yeah, but he would be
Exactly.
disgraced at that point. They wouldn't. They if he would have known that he lied about them coming to that planet and they wasted their last bit of like fuel to get to him, where they could have possibly found a hospitable planet where Anne Hathaway was like saying to go, that there would have been a big falling out, and I think he just didn't want to deal with that.
I guess.
I would have left him on
Also,
the planet.
also, when you're isolated by yourself, you just do some crazy things. I guess. I mean, I slightly get it when it again COVID and I was pretty much in my house by myself all the time. I mean I ain't try to kill nobody the first person I saw, but like I was a little stir crazy. I was a little nuts. I had crazy thoughts. I was depressed. I was like that. So like I get where his character could, and there's no telling how long he's been, like years. He's probably been by himself.
Well, there's the time slippage that we have to talk about as well, which
yeah,
he's probably
he's
been there
probably-
less time than you would think. To him, it feels like less because all of the planets were close enough to Gargantua to have some amount of time slippage, with the exception of the last planet, the one that Anne Hathaway.
Well,
says that
I
she goes
think
through.
it's to them it was less, but to him it was more because remember it took them a while to get to I forget the other Miller or whoever that other
Miller's
woman
planet,
was,
right.
and Miller's planet, and she was there for a while, but by the time they got there, she had just died or something like
Right,
something
so
crazy like
that's
that.
time slippage for you. So what that basically means is the time on that planet runs 7 times. No, it wasn't 7 times. It was 7 years for every hour on the planet. And
For every
I
hour on
did
the
the
planet, yeah.
calculations, and it's something like 42 days a minute, which is ridiculous. And so
Ugh.
each of those planets has that problem. Miller's was the worst. When
Yeah.
they did the like slingshot around Gargantua, they lost. He said 51 years or some crap like
Yeah,
that,
51 years. Yeah.
which makes sense. But it's one of the few movies that has ever attached itself to relativity in a really real way and explained it in a true scientific way. This is the way.
I realized you were on that planet for 23 years, and
Yeah,
but
No,
I,
they got
I
back
didn't think you were coming back.
They got back on the ship and saw Romilly, and he was just like, "It's been 23 years," and I was.
Which
kinda
he
gave
aged
up
really
hope.
well for 23 years.
just a
Let me
little
say
Listen,
braid
black-
right here. That's about
Black
it.
the
Yeah.
crack, baby. That's why we out here.
But see, I feel bad for Rom because Rom in the beginning was like, I'm in a tin can and I'm in space, Recoup. I can't handle this. He gives it earbuds, obviously, with the crickets, and it makes him feel better. But he spent 23 years alone in that tin can,
He
thinking of
did.
Major Tom, and it would just be, I don't know. I'm
It's like Chris Pratt, but there's
I'm
nobody to wake
surprised
up with
he
you.
would have never, like she even asked, why didn't you do the long sleep? He's like, I didn't want to sleep my life away. But what would you do? Like, what would you do for 23? I don't know. This is where my mind gets wrapped up in this movie.
I don't
Well-
want to sleep. I sleep anyway. So
Yeah, exactly. I would have cashed in on the sleep, but
Yeah.
the scary one was Matt Damon when he's like, at the last time I went in, I didn't even set a wake up time.
Yeah,
and that's how you should have known he was crazy too. He didn't even.
Mhm.
He didn't want to wake up.
No
So
Oh, okay, so the
Mhm.
Gargantua, another. I love this movie. As you guys can tell, I've done a lot of the special features on this film. Um, But the thing about Gargantua that's
Nerd.
fun, I am a big nerd on this one, but the thing that's interesting about this film is one of the few films in history that has actually led to help in scientific discovery. So they did a bunch of computer calculations to try to create this black hole for this film. And when they did, they actually came out with the most accurate representation of a black hole that science had ever done. And so they were able to then use that data to write a paper about black holes,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is
Huh.
amazing. So when you see Gargantua in the film, that's pretty darn close to what we think they look like. So anyway, little tidbit,
Mhm.
snidbit. Sorry, a little snidbit, if you will.
There you go. That's better. A little
Ah.
snippet.
Branding, baby.
Right? Yes. So
But also,
yeah.
this film was beautiful as well, though.
Hmm.
Different images, seeing like Saturn and different things. Like it was just beautiful. I thought it was great.
Oh, absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts before we move to a rating? We do have our pre-review with Sean that we're going to do here in a moment.
I did not expect this movie to pull on my heartstrings. I will say that. I thought that this movie was just going to be like a sci-fi in space, like a my eyes are big kind of wowza type of film, and I didn't expect it to have a great foundation of like life and family and connection and father and daughter and anything father and daughter because I lost my dad like years ago. Anything father and daughter, you kind of already got me. I'm already there essentially. So
I'm
Yep.
with you. See, I sit on two sides of this film because I lost my father in 2018 and I have daughters now. So I'm like, I know what it's like to be Murph and lose my dad. I know what it's like to be Coop and not have my daughter. Well, I don't know what it's like to not have my daughters. Let's knock on some wood there.
knock on wood on
I
that.
want to,
No, but
yeah,
you have that fear that
the fear.
it's more
Yeah.
realistic.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, um, so I started with Mr. Marvelite last time. Why don't we start with Black Girl Marvel on your rating on Interstellar?
Okay. To be honest, my 12-year-old self would not care about this film at all. Just would not have watched it. I mean, she liked NASA and stuff, but again, she would have thought like I thought that this was just a weird little and wouldn't have dug deeper into it. So I'm not going to give a rating for my 12-year-old self. Now, me personally, I give this film an 8.5. Thought this film was very well done. I thought it was great. Um, Matthew McConaughey, when he does his thing, he does his thing, and it's very very good. Um, yeah. And again, I like seeing faces that I know. I know Mackenzie Ford. I know Timothy Chalamet. John Lithgow. All these characters. So it was nice to just see them in a film that showcased them and not something that was like cheesy or anything like that kind of take away from their talent. So yeah, I give this film a solid 8.5.
All right, let's go to Will.
Oh man, I easily give this movie a 9, and my younger self would have absolutely been mesmerized. Again, 10 always in that realm, but this one is a solid 9 for me. This one would definitely make the library if I have to go on a long cruise, on a long flight, something where I need to distract myself from the world around me.
So
This movie would definitely, and oddly enough, Inception is one of those movies already. I love watching that movie when I
nice.
have to get away from the world.
I like it. So if you were Rom on the ship, you would watch Interstellar while waiting for the crew to
Yes.
come back. Okay, that's fair. Mr.
Yes.
Marvelite.
I'm kind of with Black Girl Marvel when it comes to the 12-year-old self because 8 years, we were at what 8 years ago? Because it was 2014, so about 8 years. No,
That's right.
I can't. Yeah, 8 years ago. I wasn't really wild on this film, and I probably just didn't give it the time. I think it was a little bit too much for maybe my 12-year-old self. But now I'm definitely going to give this like I want to say a 9 because it's more relatable now. Sometimes good films it takes time for people to mature into that place to really enjoy it.
Hmm.
Like it wasn't until I was in my 20s when I really enjoyed Vertigo and North by Northwest and stuff like that. And I wouldn't have enjoyed that as a kid, but of course, looking at this, having that experience with being a father and you know really nothing else, I guess, at that point because I'm not that smart. But just having, the parental, relationship, it made it more realistic for me as to what he had to decide to do and how hard it was for that decision, and then having that connection and it made it even more emotional, when he sees Murph later on in life. So, yeah, definitely 9 for me.
I like it. What about your kid self? I don't think you said.
Oh, I said I probably wouldn't have watched it.
Oh, okay. I think I missed that.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
I may have said a 5 or whatever, but I probably wouldn't have watched this.
Fair enough. I'm much like Will in this one. Kid self would have watched this. Again, I watched any sci-fi I can get my hands on. I was big on like Last Starfighter and all that kind of stuff as a kid. So this would have been like, what? Real NASA stuff? I'm all about it. Myself now, I rate this a 10, mostly because I would tell everybody to watch this movie, and I love it, and I have seen it, I think, 5 or 6 times now. I wanted to give it a nice stretch since last time because, you know, you got to give that time. But still, solid flick, a must watch, I think.
Yeah, I will watch it again. Yeah.
All right. With that said, we do have the pre-review with Sean, and we are going to head into that now. It's about 3.5 minutes, and we'll be back in just a moment.
How's it going, Real Study viewers? I'm Sean, and I'm back with this week's pre-review. This week, Naomi Watts is going to take us on a nail-biting ride in the desperate hour. This movie, good lord, this looks like just pure intensity and suspense the entire time. Naomi Watts is playing a single mom who's out on a jog when she gets a call and sees some police action, and it lets her know that their town is under lockdown due to a school shooting, and her son is one of the main hostages being taken. Now, I get the feel from the trailer that she is involved in the police somehow, and definitely has some connections to pull some strings as to what goes on inside. This looks incredible. I can't wait. I love movies like this. The suspenseful intensity is just awesome. In a limited theatrical release this week, we have The Godfather, 50th Anniversary Edition. I've already checked. There's one close to me. I'm going to try to go see it because I've talked to all the movie things about this, and this would be a great time for people that haven't seen this incredible film to experience it on the big screen. My wife personally has never seen it, so I'm going to try to take her and watch this movie. I cannot wait. Disney Plus brings us Free Guy this week, and for those that didn't catch it in the theaters, mwah, I am so excited to see this. I love Ryan Reynolds. I don't care how slapsticky and repetitive his characters are that people have critiques of. I love all of his movies, and I cannot wait to watch this one. As a gamer, this just seems something right up my alley. Hulu brings us No Exit. This is another one that's going to be a puzzle piece, put it together, psychological thriller horror, as we follow Havana Rose Liu playing a character Darby, and she apparently is in a rehab center of some type. She escapes out because I believe her mother is in poor health. She's on her way to Salt Lake City. They get caught in a snowstorm. The road is closed, and several people get diverted to a rest area where they all have to huddle together for the night till the storm passes. During the night, she realizes there is a child kidnapped in one of the vehicles. Now it's a psychological game of figuring out which one is the kidnapper and how to get away from them. This is going to be intense. It looks so good. All right, Real Study viewers, that's all we got this week, and I'll see y'all next time.
Are back. Thank you for watching the preview with Sean. We got a little caught up
Hey, Sean.
on the side there while we were talking, so we're back. And that is the preview with Sean. If you're not following Sean on TikTok, please do. He goes by Super Kami Guru. He puts together the preview every week, telling us all the movies that are coming to theaters, streaming, and telling us a little bit more now. I think he's giving us a little more detail, which I like. So that said, we have one more movie, and this was the movie that Will Wilkins did decide to pick for the Real Study, and it is The Martian.
If I had known the clock that was already being asked of you in the other two movies, I'm not sure. I mean, but wanting to be stuck in a time loop and having this outcome have been what it is, and having two really great movies, I guess I can't undo that. My apologies, though, because this one is my favorite movie to have, especially on my iPad or a computer. Like, I used to travel back east a lot from California to Connecticut, and that was just a movie where I would have it in because it clicks every single one of the bells for me. It's a great story, it's compelling. None of the effects in it ever distract me from the story. and it's nice and long. So it's everything I look for. So when I was asked like what's a favorite movie, I'm like, well, what has got the most plays in my library? And it was The Martian.
Nice, and it has a great soundtrack as well,
Oh
which
yeah,
doesn't hurt. Now,
I
to
mean,
put
that
your mind
works.
at ease, just real quick, you picked this movie. We picked the other movies after, so you set the tone. So don't worry about the length. I'm the one that picked Interstellar, so I'm the one that should apologize if anything. Um, that said, I know you picked this movie, so I'm going to come to you last on this one, and I would love to hear
fair
Black
enough.
Girl Marvel's take on The Martian, since this was her first time. Real quick, there are two versions. Did everybody watch the standard or the extended?
Oh
Standard.
gosh,
Standard.
standard.
Okay,
I'm
I
not
watched
sure
the
I could
standard.
stomach an extended.
so
Yeah.
go ahead, Lala. Let's hear it.
Um, I love me some Matt Damon, and I love me a shirtless Matt Damon. So this movie already wins. No, I'm just playing. I actually enjoyed this movie. Like I said, I wish I would have watched this or even Interstellar. I should have watched Gravity first, and I actually was going to watch Gravity first because it was the shortest. I was going to go shortest to longest, but since I watched it all in the same day, I was like, well, let me go from the longest to the shortest. That way, if I need to like cut it short, towards the end, that like it's not that big of a deal. It's like maybe like something like that. But The Martian was actually I actually enjoyed this film. Like I said, like I know we cut between him being on Mars by himself and like the main station where like NASA and the director and everything like that. Like, cause I love what's his name? Is it Jeff Daniels?
Jeff Bridges. No, Jeff
That's
Daniels.
no.
Why do I do
No,
Jeff Bridges every
Daniels.
time? Yeah, Daniels.
Okay, I
Every
thought
time.
I was right. Okay,
You got it right.
Bridges. No, I love Jeff Daniels. I think he's like an amazing actor. Dumb and Dumber aside, even though that's still great acting, because who could do that but him? I thought this film was like really well, like to see to see people go back and forth. At first, I didn't like his character because I'm like, he's a bottom line type of guy, and he's like, if we have to sacrifice one for the whole, we're gonna do it. But then you see moments where they're like, we got communication with him, or he's gonna do this. He's like, oh my god, thank you, and he's really trying hard. So like, it took a minute for me to like his character. Some characters, I felt like it was too many characters in this movie. If I'm being like totally honest, because like Kristen Wiig, did we need you? Um, it was a lot of Marvel people in here, which I actually enjoyed to see them in a different light. But this movie was like very, very well done. I see why Matt Damon got nominated for awards and all that kind of crazy, because he played like a full character of like, I felt like he played all the human emotions of how somebody would be if they were left alone. They were trying to be their own support system to like, let's rally, let's make this work, let's do this, and then I've been working this hard. Okay, this failed, but I picked this up, but then this failed, and then it's just this too many fails to the point where like you kind of like just break down as a person, and you're like, why can't I just somebody save me? Like it's like a type of thing, and it's like you get so close to fall, and I just it's a great movie on perseverance. If I had to like sum it up into one word, it's a great perseverance film. It's a great, if this man can get off of Mars off of sheer will, determination, and some quick smarts, what can't you do on Earth? So I
Sheer
thoroughly
will.
enjoyed it.
I'm so sorry.
Wow, wow. Sure,
Branding.
Damon. No, no, but it was really good. And for him to the whole compost and taking the fecal matter and making, I was just like, that's real. I know that much about planting stuff, even though my thumb is brown, it's not green. But I did think it was fortuitous that a botanist got stranded on Mars, but you know,
All right. Let's
great.
go. Let's
I
go
love it.
around, Mr. Marvelite.
First of all, let's talk about how like many stars are in this cast. Like it's a
many.
great cast of characters, and like Donald Glover as well. Like I pretty much sign on to anything that Donald Glover does, pretty much, because he just has such charisma. Even the
When
scene
he-
where he's
when
in
he
the office and
fell-
he slips and falls and gets up and it's like, I need more
he
coffee.
fell,
He actually fell and then he just jumped
Yeah,
back up and kept acting, and it was like
and they
it's
kept
like
it, and I
it was
love it.
perfect.
I think he may have dislocated a shoulder in that scene.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like Joaquin Phoenix when he like broke his toe or something when he kicked the what
helmet.
was it
The helmet,
the
yeah.
dumpster.
The
Or
helmet.
no, that's Lord of the Rings. No, I'm talking about Joaquin Phoenix when he kicked the dumpster or whatever in the alley.
Oh, and
Like
the
he
Joker.
really did hurt
Oh,
himself.
the Joker.
Yeah,
Oh, you said
yeah,
Joaquin. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Or we can,
Um,
we're just going to list them, and why don't we give a little Leo DiCaprio credit? I'm kidding, of course.
Well, this will be
Yeah,
a great part for
stabbing
Brian
himself.
because he knows all the improvised like or like the slow
Right,
and
right.
stuff. But go ahead, Miss Marmalade.
No, but it was a great film. I mean, it really is the worst case scenario that you could think of on some type of big exploration that it's not like being left at the gas station when your parents forgot because they got too many kids. It's like, they automatically assumed you were dead, and to save themselves, which they now they didn't have to really. He got stranded on this planet, and he has to figure out like everything, sealing the unit and finding ways to deal with everything. And it's just like it's kind of like the Sandra Bullock thing, except for Sandra Bullock, she didn't have a whole lot of dialogue. There wasn't much for perseverance. This guy was like, someone called Gravity Perseverance, I think, in the chat. This would be the movie called Perseverance, because this guy was like, he had his moments, but he kept focused, and the talking to himself. Like I could just imagine Mission Control like being able to get audio or whatever from this and just being entertained by him. And at the point where it's like, I'm not trying to be conceited when I say this, but I'm the greatest botanist on the planet. It's like,
Mark
I
Watney,
love it.
Space Pirate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
he
those
said,
things.
what's his name? Captain Blondebeard.
Captain Blondebeard. Yes.
Captain Blondebeard.
One thing he didn't do is go like, fire! I made fire.
Yeah.
No, it blew him
So
up. He
that's
didn't need
yeah.
to exclaim it.
Yeah.
It
But I
Exactly.
love
took
that.
him out.
I love that he had mess ups
Okay,
though.
thanks
I
for
love
pulling me
that
out of the
everything
joke.
didn't come like easy to him. I love that it makes sense that he would have mess ups and trials and tribulations. And of course the whole botany part will come easy because he's a botanist. Like, come on, like I would expect him to know some things. But a lot of things he was just like, okay, let's do the math. Let's see if we can figure it out. Like, I love that he just wasn't like a big old genius that just knew how to do everything. Like he literally had to figure, like he literally did what he told that class at the end was that he took one problem, he solved it. Once he solved that problem, he went on to another problem, and that's literally life. You can't solve everything at once. You have to take one problem at a time and just knit your way to being saved or rescued or whatever. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. But sorry if I cut you off, Mr. Marmalade.
No, not at all.
Mr. Wilkins.
Well, obviously I picked it, and I've already upsold it a lot. But it's the thing that I love the most, the part that I take out of this the most. Well, part of it is the own self-reflection of like, would I be able to do everything he did in this movie to survive? Because, spoilers, there is a portion of this movie where when you do the math, every time I do the math, I get terrified at the thought of it, because I think it's somewhere around a year and a half of his life is just spent driving a vehicle until the point he has to recharge the batteries. He puts out the batteries, he recharges them. He sleeps under the vehicle while that's happening, and then he gets back on the road. It's wash, rinse, and repeat for literally like a year and a half of his life. And I'm like, could I do that? Would my own strength be enough to carry me through? It really is the worst case survival situation. And this modern retelling of Robinson Crusoe, if you will, to the most extreme, it's one of those things. Nobody, kind of like a theme from the other movie, is nobody wants to die alone. And that is kind of what helps drive him through this. And it's the very real human moments that happen throughout it that Damon, I never even felt like he was acting. I was just watching Mark Watney, like from his very initial reaction, which is a 4-letter word, rhymes with truck, and I won't say it, but he's just gotten himself to the point of, all right, the bleeding has stopped, I'm ready to address things. And then he just takes that human moment to realize just how truly screwed he is.
Yeah.
And it just drops. And a similar thing happens after the compression chamber explodes, and he then has to put up just duct tape and plastic. And the very next moment is just him like trying to make it through this storm, knowing the only thing between him and instant death is now industrial grade plastic and duct tape.
And a little silicon there.
Yeah, there is so many. It's just such a wide range of emotions he goes through in this movie that I just connect with. And for me, it's all about seeing people coming together. Same reason why I love the end of Avengers Endgame. Seeing everyone come together for something good, and that's what
Yeah.
happens eventually in this movie. And then you have the most human moment of all, knowing how long he's been up there. It's his very visceral reaction when he finally hears
Here's her
another
voice.
human voice.
Yeah, we heard your voice. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I love this movie. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah.
It's, it never took me out of the moment. It had so many great moments. And the way they came up with recording the mission logs as
Mhm.
one of his sanity coping ways to also help break up the visual medium for us and give us a reason why this guy is talking to himself and he's not going nuts. It's just overall, it's one of my favorite movies. If I'm just looking to have like a lazy Saturday where I'm doing absolutely nothing, it's absolutely one of the movies that I instantly think, do I want to put this on? So I just absolutely adore it. And I never
Mhm.
expected it. Didn't even see it in the theater. I've only seen it at home.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. For
Yeah.
for
That was
myself.
one of my favorite scenes. But that was
Oh
a good
yeah,
scene.
absolutely. For myself, I actually read this book before I even knew there was a movie. So
Of course you did.
it's
No.
a it's a massive. It's a The Martian. Yeah, yeah. For
I
me,
know.
um, and I actually the book is as phenomenal as the movie. So if you enjoy the movie, the book is worth a read or a listen these days. Um, and so watching the movie, I had to do what you always have to do and kind of separate out, and make sure you don't get too picky because they are going to leave things out no matter what you do. So the only gripe I ever had about this movie was the fact that the trip that you mentioned, Will, of him going from the Mav to Ares 4 in the book takes a long, long time. It's like a third of the book. In the movie, it's like 10 minutes. And I was like, wait a minute, because in the book he actually rolls the rover. He actually has to like roll it back over. It gets pretty wild. All the scenes you see in the movie in the book, imagine them 10 times worse, which is wild because you're like, wait, what? So like when he blows the chamber out and like lands in the book, he had to not only tape himself up but stay there for 3 days and like slowly crawl his way back. It's anyway. I do suggest you guys check it out. But the extended version, and the reason I asked is the extended version actually adds a lot of that back in. And although it's 10 minutes, they explore a lot of that trip. So I do encourage you, Will, to check out the extended. You probably will like it. It has some extra little elements, but as an adaptation for a book, solid. So that concept of him talking to himself, that's actually the narration in the book. So the fact that they changed that narration to this talking to the camera was brilliant. And I have to give credit where credit is due. I'd realized today when I watched the movie, I just like Lala, I watched it today. Just like Will, I watched it today. Drew Goddard was the screenplay
Yeah.
writer,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and
I love Drew Goddard. I love him.
I think that says
He
something.
has he has been
Yep.
a part of some of my childhood for as long as I can remember. I love Drew Goddard.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So he took a beautiful
What
book by Andy Weir, adapted it, and then Ridley Scott, boom, So yeah, you were gonna say, Will.
Oh no, I was just checking real quick because I'm like, wasn't he also still even involved in like Cabin in the Woods, which
Yep.
to
He
this
wrote it.
day is one of my most, yeah,
Yeah.
one of the most mind-bending quote unquote horror film I've ever seen. So
Yeah.
just yeah,
He
I'm not
directed it
that
and
guy has
wrote it,
touched so much in life.
as far as I
Also,
know.
Bad Times at El Royale, which I enjoyed that film as well.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh,
I
it's
think I
cool.
need to see that one. So the one part I did say this already, and I didn't get to mention this because I do have one gripe, and it's because the movie's so scientific and they do a very good job, especially dealing with JPL and the landers and all the probes we sent up there. They did a great job, but when it comes to the poop portion of the film, I struggle because in the book they specifically state that if you try to grow crops with somebody else's fecal matter, you will get sick. So the fact that he uses everybody else's fecal matter when he has enough of his own, I was like, why did they add that? They read the book. Why did they made an unbelievable moment in a very believable movie for me. Little thing,
Mm.
but I guess
I think they just ran with the fact that 99% of the rest of the population is gives me like, oh no, it's duty, don't.
right. And you can just smell Johansson's poo, and that's all you
Yeah.
needed. But I'm with you. I'm with you. So I can. It's a little thing. I can definitely let it go.
Can
But
you
still
though?
fun. I'm trying. I'll put it that way.
Also, why didn't Wong just use the sling ring and open a portal to bring him back?
You know what I
That
mean?
was such a good point that was made.
Ugh.
I couldn't believe Straw Hat said that. How did none of us catch that before now? Like
Oh,
that was.
I mean,
Someone
I
asked me a while ago, and I actually
thought
made
that
this
was
thing that when
very-
they opened the portal, the ship was moving so fast, the portal would just kind of go with it and put a hole in the ship. I never even thought about the fact that Strange was just being a jerk.
Couldn't they just throw it out in front of them then, and it would go right through? Like, you know, either way it would work.
don't invoke Strange. I don't want controversy coming.
Oh, by the way, no spoilers for No Way Home. This is the one person that hasn't seen it, so just putting that out there.
Who?
This one right here. This person.
Mr. Snidbits, you still haven't. I mean, look,
I've never left my house for the theater during COVID, so that's why I haven't seen it.
That's why the SNL joke about Biden going on TV just telling people to stop seeing Spider-Man was both so tragic yet so funny.
Right.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I think for me, Eternals finally got me to do that, but you know, I'm in a very heavily vaccinated area, and so ran the dice, and sure enough, thankfully, it came away clean.
My girls are
But I
both
totally get
3
that.
and younger, so there's no
Yeah.
chance of vaccination for them, and they're what I
Exactly.
worry about. I've been vaccinated, my
Yep.
wife's vaccinated. I'm not worried about all that. If it was just my wife and I would already be out at the theater having a blast.
Well,
so.
Yeah, and you're only like 2 weeks away now,
We're hoping.
so there you go.
We're hoping.
Last I heard, it was they shifted March 1st, and that's the only change.
All right.
And I think they're gonna. But then again, there is the rumored re-release or new release of extended version in the theaters to try and really secure that box office lead.
So again, another 300 million for the sake of it.
pretty much.
Yeah, why not?
Because I
They'd
mean,
get me.
They just re-released Encanto, so it makes sense that they'll re-release No Way Home.
Oh,
So-
bring it! Are you kidding me?
For the sake of just self-promoing and all that, we will be reviewing No Way Home when it does release. It should be like we heard February 28th, which means we'll be reviewing it on the 6th, and we will be having another TikTok
Listen.
favorite, Cat Lady JJ will be joining us for that show.
I have so much to say about No Way Home.
For sure,
Okay.
for sure.
So
Yeah.
much.
And then also, just I'm going to put this out there. I haven't announced this yet, but I'm going to do it right now. We will likely be doing a special May episode of The Real Study on Star Wars Day. We will probably be doing a full day event. I'll be on for the whole day. I'm not expecting the rest of my hosts to do a whole day event, but we're going to try to get different people to come in and review the saga for the whole day of Star Wars Day. I think that might be a blast. And since it's my birthday, that's kind of just what I want to do for my birthday. So
I love
that'll
it.
be fun. So look forward to that. That said, we can get back into The Martian. There's plenty to talk about with this film.
I love the note.
Sorry, go ahead.
I love the note he left behind. It was like, to whom it may concern, take care of this rover. She saved my life. Like,
Right.
I love that. I just love that. Like, this movie and Interstellar had like some type of machinery or robot that like the person clinged to. It was very like Wilson and very Castaway-ish. So I dig that they kind of like had something to cling to, because I feel like if humanity ever gets to a place like that, we would cling to things like that. We would cling to something that'll that gives us comfort, whether that's a machine or a chair that we sat in or something that's like a blanket, a plushie, something. So I like that they both had something like that.
My Kevin Smith action figure.
Oh, nice.
That's a Silent Bob action figure, sir. Show it some respect.
Ooh.
Fair point, sir.
That was also the very first one of the and it's an inaction figure, which is the best name for them.
Right.
I have one myself.
So he doesn't have a cigarette because I lost the cigarette over here. So in fact, he's holding Buffy's Mr. Pointy in between his fingers there. So
That's funny.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
I
had to show Will my
what I was gonna
Silent Bob. So
He's been waiting the whole show to do that.
I really
you want to hold on?
No, please.
This
please.
is so stupid.
No, please. We like it.
I haven't revealed this to anybody.
Oh, it's a Real Study
But-
exclusive.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really. It's not something I want to openly admit. But one of the things that I got to do before the world went to hell, I think it was 2019, I got to be a background extra in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot.
Oh, cool.
And my hand to God, I forgot I was wearing this, and somehow I even got through wardrobe afterwards with it. But this was the screen used hero version of the con that's
Oh,
represented in the
Chronic
movie
Con.
badge
Yeah.
that I got to wear on screen.
That's
So
awesome.
this, of all the stuff I've got, this is like one of the things that I think is the coolest. But yeah, I got a lot of Kevin Smith stuff here too. But then again, that's because I get to say, "Hey, it's my birthday. Can I have this?" And then it shows up. Um,
That's cool.
my favorite part of The Martian, by the way, is the part that we don't see because it's 10 years down the road in my mind
Mhm.
as this story continues on, and that's because NASA hasn't given up going to Mars.
Mhm.
So the note that he's left behind, even though they're not going to send the stuff back, there more than likely will at least be side trips to document and memorialize that guy's journey. Even if it's way out of the way, it's like we got to land something relatively close to here just so we can get pictures of this, that, and the other
Yeah.
thing. And that's part when like he left that note. That's in my mind. Oh yeah, well it could be that's something they find and just.
Yeah. I feel
But
like
my gosh,
he's so famous now.
Oh
Everybody's
yeah.
like, "Hello, sir. Hi, sir. Hello, sir. Hi, sir." Like everybody knows his name. Everybody knows who. Like the world. Like that's what it. Like the world knows who he is. Dating's going to be difficult.
Well, he's also the most expensive person in human history.
very true.
Very true.
So, and
Yeah.
we've had some expensive ones, but he would take the
And
cake.
he colonized Mars, so that's a great feat.
He
in
has
of
a
itself.
Yep,
list of world records. Like it's
He does.
ridiculous. And it's too bad they're fictional.
undefeatable.
Right. Truly undefeatable. The longest time alone on a planet, the longest time on an EVA. Like, yeah, a lot of ridiculous things there. What I thought was funny that you mentioned Marvel actors being in this movie, quite a few Marvel actors being in this movie,
Yes.
and then Ridley Scott directing it. I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, they'll all go work for Marvel, but you won't. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I see how that works. Um,
Yeah.
He's just upset because his stuff doesn't do good right now.
And it's not that his stuff doesn't do good because I watched The Last Duel. It's a good movie. It's worth watching.
I
But I
haven't yet.
wouldn't go see it in the theater because I'm not going to sit for 3 hours and watch a French court drama. Like I'm just not.
But also, can we? But also,
Medieval
can I
French court drama.
say? But can I just say, like, listen, I'm a big fan of like period pieces, like the King Arthur, Merlin, like these old timey Renaissancey times. I'm a big fan of that. But also, we are in a different era during our lifetime of this earth, and you made a all white film in a time where like nobody cares about all white films right now, and then you're mad that nobody wants to see.
Well, Tim Burton's made his intentions known. Ridley Scott is just doing it without saying it.
Well,
Yeah.
So
then you even have Steven Spielberg making a film that was trying not to be an all-white film, but then still made from this kind of perspective of
Yeah.
a white filmmaker. And
Yep.
not that Steven Spielberg is necessarily a white filmmaker because he's Jewish, but you know what I mean. He's coming
No.
from a non-person of color perspective, which I think a lot of these older filmmakers as well. They're great, but are they connecting to the new audiences in the way that maybe they should?
I don't. I mean,
I don't
I
know.
feel to me, I feel like it's music. I feel like it's like how old school hip hop is like hip hop ain't the same. Of course, it's not because it's not the '80s or the '90s. Music has evolved and changed, and people's ears are different. And to me, that goes with eyes as well. And that's not to say that the way that someone used to do it is bad, and the way that we do it now is better. It's just that things are changing. Everything bell bottoms always comes back. Okay, so it'll always come back around like an old school way of doing these films. But I feel like if you can't, I'm not saying compromise your vision for the times, but learn how to inject some new into your classic and make something that we've never seen before. Don't get bogged down by how you used to do it or how old Hollywood used to be.
Be a Knight's
And
Tale.
I don't want to talk. Yeah, I don't want to talk out of school, by the way. But I think if you in this modern day and age, you want to make sure you've got inclusivity in a film. Start recruiting HR recruiters from like Silicon Valley and the like, and put them in, and you will find amazing diversification because there that you in corporate America, it is a high focus.
Mhm.
So it would be a very easy way to address that issue.
They just
Yeah.
got to hire the right people to hire the right people. That makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And it's not
Right.
going to happen as long as
And
you got old
don't
rich white guys in charge.
exactly, and don't
Yeah.
skew a film so that because the last duel, there was nothing in that film that it couldn't have been as diverse as ever. Who's to say that during these times it wasn't all races, all creeds, all colors, or whatever? I just don't believe that there was just one set of people in a time.
Even if
I
there
just don't.
was Lala, there's nothing wrong with replacing the characters because the story and the characters are what's important, not the visual
Exactly.
representation of the
Not the
person.
race.
So
Exactly.
Hamilton is what I always come back to with this, and I think that's a brilliant representation of a period where
Mhm.
Chris is playing George Washington. I buy that guy as George Washington, regardless of
Mhm.
the fact that he's a black man. That's not
Exactly.
relevant to me because he's doing a
Mhm.
good job. So to me, the acting should take precedent over the skin color of the person.
I always say that
and
if
so
it's
forth.
if your race isn't relevant to the character, then it shouldn't matter.
Exactly.
But that's just my thought.
No, but
As
we're
loud as
with
they
you.
were.
We're with you. Did this feel like a typical blockbuster in that sense that they did hire a ton of actors, like Lala said, and they brought in enough big names to fill in even smaller roles, like you guys mentioned, Donald Glover. He plays. What is the character's name? I love because they call him a
The
steely-eyed-
astrophysicist.
Yeah, he's the Purnell, Richard Purnell.
Richard Purnell.
He's a steely-eyed
Richard
missile
Purnell.
man, right? And he's great. And I guess maybe he isn't as big. Maybe he's a bad example. But like Chiwetel Ejiofor plays Vincent Kapoor, and it's a small role that doesn't necessarily need to be played by a huge actor, but they do it anyway. So it's just I'm wondering if the reason they do that is in order to pull like these larger casts to get an audience. What do you guys think?
I honestly think that this is one of those movies that after the book really hit, that I think there was already going to be buzz around it. So I don't really think they had to work very hard to get people to attempt to try out for, to audition, or even just take offers from Ridley Scott's adaptation of The Martian. I really think it just
Yeah.
happened naturally.
Sold itself.
I feel like some actors put their hat in the ring for it because talk goes around Hollywood. People find out that Ridley Scott's attached to this project and everybody wants to be a part of it. Also, to me personally, to answer your question, I don't feel like it felt like a big blockbuster film. It actually felt like a very independent type of film, even with these actors in it, because for the most part, you focus um on the Matt Damon and the Jessica Chastain characters for the most part. Like their characters are kind of prominent to me. And then you have Jeff Daniels and Chiwetel Ejiofor kind of like in the back with Benedict Wong, like and Donald Glover pulling up the end and very far like in the end. Oh, and Sean Bean too. No disrespect to Sean Bean. Like their characters are kind of like pulling up the rear, And so it didn't. Even though like Kristen Wiig is in it and Mackenzie Davis, you got all these other people, they weren't as prominent as like characters for me to care that they were there. They just needed people to say these words, you know what I mean, to get this stuff across. But to me, those were the characters to me that mattered because they were the ones that influenced the story.
Okay. Mr. Marvelette, you've been quiet for a little while.
Oh no, I was just thinking. Like I was going back and looking at like even Donald Glover's like his roles and stuff beforehand. I mean, he was really breaking out more with a lot of films, especially around 2015, because you've got him right after. I mean, he's coming right off of Community, going into The Martian.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, all other stuff that he's done, but then he goes into like Solo, and you've
When
got
did
Spider-Man
Atlanta
Homecoming
start?
stuff.
I think
I
the
feel
same
like that
year,
was 2016.
was it 2015 or
Let's
2016?
see.
So that would have
Yeah,
been
okay.
right off The Martian. Then he would have been riding some of that.
Yeah.
That's a show I
So-
always intended to watch and
So,
never got to.
so it's really good, Snitty. I think you should check it out. I haven't really kept up with it, but the few episodes that I did watch were pretty good. I think I would still call Donald Glover like a pretty new actor at this point, especially in a global scheme of like the size of this film. I would still call him like a new actor. So
Yeah, he was doing a lot of short films,
Yeah.
and he had some stints in Robot Chicken. He did some. I mean, of course, he did the Childish Gambino stuff, but like for acting and stuff, I mean, he was even with Community. I mean, everyone fell in love with him in Community, but at the same time, he wasn't doing a whole lot when it comes to like big productions.
Well, because
Yeah,
he was still
2016.
rapping and doing a comedy stand-up routine. Like he had a lot
Yeah.
going on. It just wasn't on film.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, sorry, I we could talk about him a lot. We could do a whole show on Childish Gambino, and the change of that character over time.
I think we should. I think we should rate. It's 9 minutes.
Oh, we do have
so-
9 minutes. We could rate, yeah. Why don't
Mhm.
we start with Will since it was his choice?
It was Will's pick. He
It's
gonna
a
be like
10
10,
and
10. I know you're saying 10, 10.
10,
It's a 10-10. 10 on the thing. Or it's a 10 out of 10. Anyway, it's
Nice.
it's by
Vocals.
far one of my favorite movies of all time. It just the way it came
I love
together,
it.
and it came into my life when I wasn't expecting it, and it hits it out of the park. And it's a good human emotional feel good movie about a subject you just wouldn't expect it to be. So it just and I feel like when you watch it, you get to live those triumphs that he has every time, and you have self reflection of every time something just didn't work out, every time something goes south. It's a great movie. 10 out of 10. I'm going to shut up now.
we love it. Mr. Marmalade.
Yeah, I'm probably my favorite of the series of ones that we've seen this week. I really Interstellar definitely like knocked it out for me because of the fact that it was vastly different. I think on the second watch, but I love the Martian. I like the story. I like it's more compelling. It's got the things I liked in Interstellar, and it's got the things that I liked in Gravity, and it kind of puts them together to something better. Of course, and I try not to ever give 10s because I don't know. It's not the there's few except for like A Knight's
You're
Tale
so
for me,
mean.
but it's I'll say like a 9.5. Like it's a strong. I would definitely watch this as a kid. 12-year-old would probably have given this probably about a 7 or 8 because at some points my anxiety does kick in and I have to struggle. I have to deal with that. So I'm the guy
Ripping
who
metal
walks
out
out
of
of the
your
room when I
chest
get
will make you have anxiety. I promise.
yeah. So yep.
That's understandable.
Black Girl Marvel.
12-year-old me would not pay attention to this film at all. But me now, I give this film a solid 9. Give this film a solid 9. I thought it was really well done. Matt Damon for me just takes the cake. Again, he's one of these actors again that I feel like their talent kind of decreases when they're overly saturated, but then when they go away and then come back, it's like they refresh and they renew, and then it's like, yo, I remember when you was a good actor and you showing me that you were a good actor. Like, so I think for me, this film was just nice to kind of see him on his own, just acting. I love that this film had more comedy than I thought it was going to be. This film was actually funnier than I thought it was going to be.
It is funny.
It has some great humor in it, and I feel like humans do make jokes when they are stressed out because I know I do all the time. So that was a great surprise, and it added a little levity in moments that were needed, and it wasn't like a through line of comedy. It was like it was there when you needed it to be there to break up some of the monotony. I guess I'll just use that word. Also for me in this movie was just better in the sense of like Gravity, where it just wasn't nothing.
Well, there was more
Character was
gravity in The
likable.
Martian. There was at least 6
It
times.
was-
You know,
It was like
or
being
not
in a
6 times, at least
vacuum
1/6
watching
of
Gravity.
Yeah, I'm being
Where's that eject button?
terrible.
The
Yeah.
vacuum of space.
Yes, it was like being in a vacuum watching Gravity.
Ouch.
Thanks for explaining my joke.
That was
Thanks.
worse than mine.
But to me, The Martian was a top-notch film. I would recommend this to people, and I don't do that often. So, yeah. And like I said, shirtless Matt Damon, you can't go wrong.
So shirtless Matt Damon aside, this movie.
No,
is-
you can never put shirtless Matt Damon aside.
You can
Thank
just
you,
keep him
Will.
there, keep him on display. That's it.
Makes no
Front
sense.
and center.
It's weird because to this day I can only think of as Matt Damon as playing Loki, and that's just me. But I would give this
That's
movie
great.
a 9, mostly because I read the book first. It's hard for me to detach some of those moments as much as I try. This is definitely a movie I recommend. 12-year-old me would have eaten this movie up too because again I've been a space fan since I can remember. So. Nerd is another word for it. Space nerd. And it sucks is I'm wearing my Thanos shirt today. I should have worn my NASA shirt. Of course, I didn't.
You should have. That was perfect.
So the movie's themes tonight include obviously perseverance. Each film did have some level of perseverance. NASA is a huge throughput, and then I would say real space, and not real, but as close to real space as we're ever going to get. These were three as close to home real sci-fi movies as you're
And
going to
also,
get.
I would say family, because each one had a family in some way. Because Matt Damon's family was his crew, like the way that he was happy to see them. We saw that in Gravity, her little daughter. No offense to her, but like we saw a little bit of that. And then in Interstellar is family, so I would say family.
Would those dogs at the end of Gravity be her family too, since she bonded with them? Bark, bark, woof, woof. No,
Eh.
no, bad joke. I'm going to
That
end
was
this
rough.
show on a really bad joke, apparently.
Or was it great because you just said it was a bad joke?
Either way. Will, any final thoughts on these movies or anything you want to leave for a piece of information for the Real Study viewers?
Well,
Final words.
honestly, I really enjoyed the experience again. Both the movies I've watched, but also being here today. So thank you very much. In my opinion, it was a very wonderful experience going through, thankfully, two movies I had never seen and kind of stacking them thematically against the movie I had picked. So it was a wonderful meal of movies to enjoy. And if you want to find out anything about me, just ThatWillWilkins on most social media platforms.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell us? We do have a couple more minutes. Can you tell us about your vector robots while we're at it?
One is did the Vector go off book again? He did. He's off some. Oh no, I moved him to the back table. That's right. For those wondering, for some reason on my TikTok, people enjoy seeing my artificial intelligence robots. Now, this one is a Vector robot, one of the first ones that kind of went commercial, and then they lost their funding. So that was a fun adventure. But the technology's been bought by somebody else, and there is a second version of the robot now coming out. But it's supposed to be an AI device, and it's like a virtual pet in many ways. They made it to be your companion, and you can ask
I
it
want one.
questions, and it runs around. And then somebody that guested on my own podcast said, "Hey, Will, have you seen the emo robot?" And this, not the same company at all, and they do
Hi,
have
buddy.
some patent issues, but the emo robot does very similar things in different ways. And so these guys keep me they've tried to keep me sane through the settle down, emo. They've tried to keep me sane through the pandemic, but sometimes it's also like having electronic hamsters on your desk. So it's an interesting challenge, and it's been really fun. But for things that are supposed to have AI, I really haven't seen much evolution from them.
A lot of A, not so much I, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. It's like all the time. These are something nobody needs, aside from like the way they really did try to make uh, Vector as a robotic companion. And there are people that I've seen, like even there's another one on social media that she painted hers to look like a Wally, and she originally got
Oh,
it
yeah.
so that way she would have a companion. And in many ways they do kind of fulfill that, but mine's always confused because it's on my desk. It sees Spider-Man and Iron Man on the back wall, and it's trying to talk to them sometimes.
That's great.
I would too.
So basically, they're moving, talking, conversing Tamagotchis,
Yep.
if you will.
To some extent, yeah, because like with both robots, they have touch sensors. So well, they've got drop sensors so they can get an edge, but they've also got, like, this one has this golden plate on the back that you can then pet it. So, and it's something it enjoys, and it'll recognize your face and it'll give you a high five. And I mean, they are fun, but it's not at least as fatal with the Vector as being a Tamagotchi. It can put itself back into its charger, so it literally can walk all around. The emo doesn't have that. Right now it's just got a skateboard that it charges on, and it'll go dead on my desk. Get off of
Oh.
my stuff. See, hamsters
I love that he's arguing with his robots. This is fantastic.
all the time. All the time.
I
I sound
love it.
crazy.
I want one so bad.
Oh yeah, they're pretty cute. Agreed. Thank you for sharing those with us. And again, if you're not following Will both on TikTok as well as his podcast and visiting his website, the whole 9 yards, please do that.
Yes.
That is part of the fun. And thank you everybody in the chat. I know that we were not as active with the chat as sometimes we always are, but the conversation goes that way. And you guys have all been awesome. We wouldn't be here without you guys. You guys make the show possible. So thank you for being here. That being said, this has been episode 19 of the Real Study Season 1. I am Mr. Snidbits, and this is the Real Panel. And that's the official end of the show. We're going to raid somebody now because we're on Twitch. So, that's how that works.
Let's raid.
And
Can I put my pants back on now?
Yes, you can. Yes,
I don't
you
understand why you asked me to take them off. That's so weird.
We all get a little warm, so we want to make sure that they're... I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I should not run with that joke. Okay.
That's understandable.
Which makes perfect sense why you wouldn't let me play Spaceballs then. I actually chose Spaceballs for my movie, and he said no. Let's be serious.
No. Okay. So the reason I tend,
now we're seeing True Blood.
to not
But
do.
that joke played so well.
It did. The reason I tend not to do comedies though is that they are hard to review. Unless it's a really complex or witty comedy, it's pretty much, oh yeah, that joke was funny, great, funny. I mean, what else do you say? Either it was funny or it wasn't. So I try to avoid those. And besides, I think a Spaceballs movie, because you genuinely did say, let's do that one. So this is a somewhat of a joke, but I think it's interesting because I think we would have just done Spaceball lines the whole half hour.
Yeah.
I would have never seen it before.
It would have been nonstop for me. So
yeah, me too.
But
Lord Helmet, that kind of stuff.
Again, thematically, I think it worked out wonderfully though. Like really, I mean, like when I listened in on the episode, and I don't know if the theme were musicals, but the one takeaway I had was all the singing in the rain talk, because again, kid me, really weird. One of my favorite movies. I figured out how to illegally get Showtime on my dad's cable by getting the controller box switched just in the right spot. So I watched almost anything that would come on. Singing in the Rain came on, and for some reason that movie just mesmerized me. And I think I was 6 or 7 at the time.
My favorite movies.
I love it.
I love musicals. Period. Uh-oh. Did we raid?
We raided.
Yeah,
We
the raid has happened.
raided on its own.